Did you know that 33% of Americans at some point consider adoption? But what's even more shocking than that number is that only 2% of those people actually end up adopting. That's pretty bad odds. So why is it that so many people consider adopting, but so few actually make it to the stage where they are adopting a child? Well, that stat covers all sorts of different types of adoption. I know that adopting from foster care is something that a lot of people really want to do, and then for one reason or another, they never do it. So today, I'm gonna share 6 reasons why so many people end up not adopting from foster care even though they really want to. And hopefully, if you are someone who is dreaming of adopting from foster care, understanding this list can help you become one of the 2% of people who actually do follow through on your plans to adopt. Hey there, welcome back to my channel. I appreciate your patience with me over the past month or so where I just haven't been filming as much. I had this horrible virus that was just staying in my system, and I was getting sick and then better and sick, and my voice was gone. Even now, I'm not completely better, but I'm excited to be back making this video for you today. If you are new here, my name is Katie, and I am a mom to 3 awesome kids who we adopted from the US foster care system. And we adopted them as waiting children. So it's a little bit of a different situation. If that's something you've never heard about before, you're in the right place because I make tons of videos about this topic. So if you have a dream to adopt from foster care or to adopt in general, I highly recommend hitting that subscribe button because that's pretty much all I talk about around here. Okay, so let's jump into the reasons why so many people who dream of adopting from foster care never end up actually doing it. And if you hear my neighbors mowing, I apologize. I gotta film this while I can. The first reason why so many people do not end up adopting from foster care, even though they want to, is because they just don't even know where to start. And so they quit before they even really begin. They either get overwhelmed by how much information there is or the lack of information, because it truly can be either way. I know when I first started to pursue this road of adopting from foster care, I had no clue you could adopt a waiting child from foster care, which is a huge reason why I do what I do now to help other families understand that this path is available. And not only that, but to help them take those first steps so that they can get on their journey to growing their family through adopting from foster care. So if you don't know, I'm an adoption consultant and I help families from all across the country go from feeling so confused about where to start in their dreams to adopt to having a confident plan of all the steps they need to take to make this dream a reality. It is the most rewarding work. I absolutely love it. And if you are someone who's stuck at this stage or at the beginning and you're about to quit and give up, please do not give up. Number one thing you can do is watch all of my free videos. I have so much content on this channel. Just so much information about finding agencies and all of that. But I also do one-on-one consultations. If you just need someone to hold your hand through this process, make it way easier for you, I got you. I can do a 1-hour consultation with you, and I can pretty much promise you're gonna walk away feeling so much more informed about how this process works and how you can specifically begin this journey. So if you're interested in working with me, I always include a link in the description box below and also in a pinned comment. So check that out. I would love to work with you. The second reason why a lot of people, I'd say this is probably the majority of people, give up on adopting from foster care is because they try to pursue foster to adopt rather than adopting a waiting child from foster care. Now, you might be a little confused about the difference between these two. I'm gonna try to put it very succinctly because I will probably make a whole video just about the differences between these two things. But in a nutshell, adopting a waiting child from foster care is what we did. And that is where you take a child who already has been in foster care for a while and their parents have had their rights terminated. So that means that child is not going to reunify with their parents and they need a permanent placement. And for one reason or another, the home that they're currently in is not able to adopt them. And so they're looking for an outside family to come in and adopt this child. Foster to adopt, however, is different. Now, while the ultimate ending of it can be the same, where you adopt a child who was previously in foster care, the difference is that when you foster to adopt, you become a foster parent with the hopes that someday you might be able to adopt one of the kids that you foster. As you can imagine, this is much more of a roller coaster because with waiting child adoption, the child who's placed with you already, there's no chance that they're reunifying with their families. That ship has sailed. They've already pursued that. They've pursued family placements with other family members and kinship members. And that's not happening. So when they're placed with you in a waiting child adoption, it's pretty secure that you are going to adopt them. The way that you wouldn't adopt them in most cases is if you decided this isn't a good fit during that fostering period before you adopt them. This, on the other hand, is tricky because the real goal of foster care is reunification with biological family. And it's hard because there are situations where that doesn't happen. And so there are foster parents who say, I really want to adopt, but I guess I'll foster and just see what happens. And the hard part is it can be really difficult for you emotionally to go through that up and down of saying, okay, I've got a kid in my home. I love them so much. I'm pouring into them for sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years. And they can still end up going back to their biological family members because after all, the true goal of foster care is reunification. And so until they change that child's case plan goal, the permanency goal is either going to be that they are returning to their parents or that they are going to be adopted. You have no clue what's going to happen. And so it's not uncommon for people to say, I want to foster to adopt, because they truly, deep down in their heart, want to adopt a child and have them in their home forever. And what happens is they end up fostering multiple children and they get discouraged every time that child goes back to their biological family, even though that is the goal of foster care. And I think in those situations, it's really hard as the foster to adopt parent not to kind of wish against reunification. I think it takes a really specific mindset and you have to really, really be going into it hoping to foster and being willing to adopt. I think that's a totally different mindset than people who go into foster to adopt saying, all I really want is to adopt, but I guess I'll foster if that means I get to adopt someday. I think that's a very different mentality than, hey, I want to be a foster parent. I want to be a safe place for a kid for a short period of time, and I want to see what happens. And then I want to be able to, I'm open to adopting if that comes about, but it's going to be okay if it doesn't. I think that's very different. I do think a lot of people who pursue foster to adopt have a hard time keeping that in perspective. And so what happens is these parents get really disenchanted with the system, which the system is not great, guys. I'm not saying the system is amazing, but they get really disenchanted and they're like, well, they keep sending these kids back to their parents as if that wasn't the goal all along. And so as you can imagine, it's just difficult for the kid. It's difficult for the parents. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of those families end up quitting, because they've had so many failed foster placements. Because they've had so many foster placements that have not ended in adoption, and they're like, well, I guess I'll never be able to adopt, and then they quit. So that is why I recommend adopting a waiting child versus foster to adopt in general. The third reason why a lot of people never end up adopting from foster care is because they cannot find an agency who will help them do this. The truth is, it is very difficult to find agencies that specifically do waiting child adoptions from foster care. Their states call it different things. There's some states that call both programs foster to adopt. So there's not technically a program that's called waiting child adoption. They actually use the term foster to adopt, even though I would say that's a different thing that you're doing. There are some states where you can only use the public agency and there are no private agency options, or there are some states where there are tons of private agency options and it becomes overwhelming to sort through them and figure out which ones are actually doing the type of adoption you're interested in. Oftentimes you can go and adopt US Kids and you can actually click on your state and you can go through, and usually they'll have a list of adoption agencies for you. But the difficult thing is not all of these adoption agencies specifically do waiting child foster care adoptions. Some of these agencies do infant adoptions. Some of these agencies only do foster care, and they're not recruiting adopt-only families. And so sorting through all of these can be very confusing. It can be hard to figure out if your state is one where you have to go with the state agency or if there are private options. There are situations where the state agency will only allow you to adopt within your state. And so the only way to adopt out of state is to go with a private infant adoption agency that can also help you with out of state foster care adoptions. You get what I'm saying. It's just very, very complicated. And I'll be honest, as someone who literally looks through these websites and gets information for clients for my job, these websites are poorly made most of the time, where they just are not very clear. Sometimes you end up in loops where it's like, click this to go here, and then it takes you to this page and you say, okay, here's more information. It takes you back to another page you were already on. And so I completely understand why so many people who come to me are like, we have looked and looked and looked and we can't find anything. And that's where a benefit of if you do book a consultation with me, I curate a list of agencies for you with specific contact information, and I break down the pros and cons of each agency for you. And so you don't have to do that. I've had clients from Texas. Texas is a state where there are so many agencies to choose from. There can be like 30 plus agencies for one county. And so what I do is I go in there and I actually just pull out like the top 10, the top 8 or top 10 based on my research. And then, in other states, I'll work with someone like from Washington State and I'm like, hey, you have to use the state agency pretty much. And so here's your option. And then that brings them that clarity. And so just know if you are struggling to find an agency, you are not alone, but don't let that stop you from pursuing adoption because there are options out there. I guarantee something can come about. You can tweak your plan a little bit and you'll still be able to pursue this dream of adopting a child from foster care. Now, the next point here is that one reason why people don't end up adopting from foster care when they want to is that they are living in a state that is not considered adoption friendly. Obviously, we talked about how the goal of foster care is reunification, and that's the same across the board, state to state. That is supposed to be the goal. However, there are some states where kids will stay in foster care for 7, 8 years without ever getting the chance to become adopted. They just keep giving their parents chances over and over and over again to be reunified. And then those kids end up staying in the system for so long. And because of that, there aren't as many children available to adopt as waiting children because they're still kind of languishing in the foster care system. And they've been there for a long time. And as you can imagine as well, the kids who are available to be adopted are often quite old because they've been in foster care for so long before they finally terminate the parental rights and make adoption a possibility. In other states, it can be very different, where they give the parents time to reunify, but it's a shorter case plan that they're given. They're like, you need to meet these standards by this time if you want the chance of reunifying with your child. And then if they don't meet that, that state does not continue to extend and extend and extend. And so therefore, there are children who are available to be adopted at a younger age. And in general, adopting within these states is just easier because there's more of a need for it. Whereas in these not adoption-friendly states, there's a much bigger need for foster parents, for people willing to be temporary homes for children. And so I have worked with people from some of those difficult states before. Illinois is one that comes to mind. They are a state where kids stay in foster care longer a lot of times. I think Virginia can be that way at times. So just know there are states where it can be a little harder to adopt a waiting child from foster care. And so if you are someone who wants to adopt a waiting child, you do need to be open to older kids a lot of times, which will kind of bring us into our next point. But people in these non-adoption friendly states oftentimes feel really discouraged, and it does take a lot more advocating and work and effort to find an option where you can adopt. And oftentimes these people end up going through an agency where they can adopt out of state so that there is more of a possibility for them to be a home for a child who's already waiting in foster care. My last two, these are big ones. So my second to last one is that your parameters for the type of child you're imagining may just be too limited for you to ever really find a match and potentially even find an agency to work with you. And this is especially true if you are in one of those states that's not really adoption friendly. So I'm talking about things like the age of the child is a huge one. I have so many clients come to me initially telling me, we only want to adopt a child under the age of 5. And here's the thing, I get it. When my husband and I were first looking into adopting from foster care, we were actually in the same boat. And now I spend a lot of time educating people that I work with about how age isn't everything. And there are so many kids waiting to be adopted in foster care who are slightly older. Maybe they're 7, maybe they're 8. And those kids are waiting for a home. And there's a huge need for families willing to take on these older kids or especially teenagers. And so if you go to a foster care adoption agency and you say, we only want to adopt a child under the age of 5, it is very likely you are going to have that agency tell you, we cannot help you. They will say it's extremely rare, or most of the time they'll tell you it's impossible, which they can't really say, but they'll say it's impossible to adopt a child under the age of 5. And then they're like, so we can't help you. And so you may need to open your parameters. We opened our parameters from like 2 kids up to the age of 5, all the way up into 4 kids up to the age of 10. And that really came with more understanding of foster care and adoption, reading more books, talking to more families, taking our training classes, and realizing, okay, we need to be a little bit more open in our parameters. Ironically, we ended up being matched with a very young child, but I need you to understand that that is rare. That is rare. People in our agency were so shocked, especially because our parameters were so open. We were matched with a 1.5-year-old. But, age parameters, you often need to push yourself a few years higher than you may feel comfortable. And here's what I always tell people. The kid is going to get older anyway. Like, you're going to be with them at that age eventually. And I just think that age does not matter as much as some other things. That's a whole other topic. But your age parameters may be too small, and that can cause people to give up on adoption because they're like, well, they said we can't adopt. They can't help us. So I guess it's not possible. And it's like, well, it might be possible if you were opening your age range a little bit. This also goes for things like gender and the race of the child. If you are limited on that, if you're like, we only want a boy or we only want a child with the exact same racial background as us, then you can find it very limiting to be able to adopt from foster care, because that's just, the more specific you are, the harder it is to find a match, the longer you might be waiting, you might feel discouraged, and then you may give up. Sibling groups is another huge thing. If you're open to siblings, it really opens up your parameters, and agencies will be more excited to work with you because it is harder to find families who want to adopt siblings, which I think is funny because we had a really great sibling adoption situation in our second adoption. But I understand it's not for everyone, but just know that that can limit you a little more. And if you're more open on that, you may find that you have an easier time and you have an easier ability to find a match. And also, obviously, special needs. The more closed off you are to different types of special needs, the more difficult it can be. And you may end up quitting just because you're like, this child out here doesn't exist. I usually tell my clients that you should anticipate any child that you adopt from foster care is very possibly going to have PTSD, anxiety, depression, ADHD, maybe all of those other diagnoses as well can pop up, but those are very common diagnoses for kids in foster care. And if you don't think you can handle at least that, then maybe this isn't the right path for you. Or maybe you need to research a little more and kind of open your mind to those possibilities. So try to challenge yourself a bit on those parameters, and you will be more likely to be able to achieve your dream of adopting from foster care. My final one is the worst of these situations. And I want to talk about this because it's a really heavy topic. But one reason why people may give up on their plans to adopt is because they end up disrupting an adoptive placement. And I think the reason this happens is because they walk into the foster care adoption world with rose-colored glasses, feeling super optimistic. They're like, this is going to be a great experience. We're just going to love these kids and they're going to love us, and it's just going to change our lives, and they're going to be so grateful that we adopted them. And I'm just here to tell you, that is not a good mentality to go into foster care or adoption with. That is very unlikely. I think it's much better to walk into foster care and adoption with a mentality that this could be extremely hard. And I need to prepare myself for how difficult this could be. And so what happens is when these families go in with this super optimistic perspective, not really thinking through the things that could be difficult, those children come in and all of a sudden their behaviors feel crazy. Their behaviors are like, what is going on? This kid is out of control. I can't handle this. This is going to be awful. And the family ends up disrupting. Now, I don't want to shame families who disrupt adoptive placements. I know there are situations where it has to happen. There are situations where a child moves in with you and their needs are so much greater than was ever disclosed to you. And maybe some things were purposely hidden from you. And maybe you have other kids in the home and you have to protect them from the situation. I do think there are situations where the reason it happens is because the family walks into it thinking it's just going to be easy peasy. And if there's one thing I can promise you for sure is that this will be difficult. adoption will be difficult. It may be difficult in the process and the waiting, but it will certainly be difficult when your children move in with you. It's not going to be a sunshine, rainbow-filled happy ending where everyone's just holding hands and skipping through a field of flowers. It just won't. There are so many beautiful things about adoption. There's so much redemption in adoption, and so many things you can overcome with your kids. You can see them overcome difficulties in their lives and just be so proud of them. And there's so much beauty in that. But we can't walk into adoption just expecting it to be super easy, expecting us to be amazing at it. We need to walk in with, I always tell clients, like a healthy level of fear of this could be really, really difficult. And I want to mentally prepare myself for that. Because the truth is, when your child first comes to you, there will be days where you wonder if you were really cut out for this in the first place. There are days where you will feel like, will this child ever actually feel like they're my child, or will it just always feel like I'm babysitting someone else's kid? And there will be days where their behaviors are off the charts and so explosive that you'll be like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. What am I doing wrong? And those things happen. And we have to be prepared for those things and not go into adoption. You know, it's easy to scroll through the photo listings of waiting children. I have done it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but scroll through and start to build up these kids in your mind as this perfect child who's just a victim and that they're just the sweetest kid and they're going to be amazing. It's like, yes, all of those things are true. They're amazing kids. They deserve families. They deserve love. They have great qualities, but these are also kids with trauma. These are kids who are going to have difficult situations arise when they first move into your home and they're adjusting, and you will too. And so just be aware of that so that you can become one of the 2% that actually adopts a child. And my biggest hope is that through content like this, information like this, more families will decide that they actually can adopt. They have the tools to do it. They understand how the process works, and they're going into it with a realistic expectation. And we can get that 2% way higher of those 33% that consider. Let's raise that statistic. So if you're someone who's like, yes, I want to see that happen, I would love for you to subscribe to this channel. I am really getting close to 10,000 subscribers. It's just a goal I've had for a long time. I am so excited about the reach this channel is having to help more and more families who want to adopt from foster care or who want to become foster parents. I think it's just incredible. So if you would like to support this mission of this channel to encourage and inform people about foster care adoption, subscribe to the channel. It does so much to get our message across to more people and to help more kids find permanent homes. Also, really quick before you go, since you made it all the way to the end of the video, first of all, I'm just so proud of you. Good job. You made it all the way to the end. Other people are quitters, but not you. That's why you're going to be one of the 2% that actually adopts. But I like to do a little secret thing in the comments where we do a secret emoji. And today, because I am trying to grow my subscribers on my channel, if you are someone who is subscribed to the channel, I would like you in the comments to put your favorite emoji. So it can be any emoji, your favorite one to use, maybe the one you use the absolute most, maybe the one you think is the funniest. If you are subscribed to the channel, put that emoji in the comments so I know who my people are. And I honestly can't wait to see what your favorite emojis are, because I think it tells you a lot about a person what their favorite emoji is. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.